All right. One more from the cave. One more from the cave, then I'm leaving. Big day. I'm just checking stuff off like crazy, and everything I do right now is geared up for leaving to go up north with my spare moment. So, what have I got done? All the camp gear, check. Got the trailer axle done, check. Got the new tent finally squared away, check. Set up in the backyard, all good. And one of the biggest checks I just checked off was getting Sarah shooting her new gun. It's so bizarre. If you've known Sarah, a lot of you have sort of known of her for the past handful of years, but she, I just bought her this rifle, I don't know, a couple months ago. It's a 708. Anybody's curious, fits her perfect. And she's a sniper. Couldn't believe it. And I didn't let her shoot from a bench at all. Because we are hunters. This is hunting. And the best, you wouldn't believe how many people have guided. They shot, go to the range, and shot for hours. Shoot from the bench. And they get them in the woods, and they can't hit nothing. And they lose their shit, and they can't hold steady. I had a guy just a few years ago, big avid hunter, semi-first timer, and he couldn't freehand an elk. And he had to, and he couldn't do it. Needed a rest. So I freehanded it and dumped it. And so I had Sarah shoot her gun. She got to shoot her gun for the very first time. I took a scope off one of my favorite rifles, little 243, slapped it on there. And then if she didn't shoot at 100 yards, 1 inch to the left of the bullseye, very first shot ever. I just about fell over. And then I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I go, try to do that again. Holding the exact same spot again. Then she's standing up using a rest. I showed her how to use her hand and rest the gun on her hand on the side of a tree as a rest. Drilled it again, and the gun was equally off 1 inch to left. And then, so I took a couple shots then, got it zeroed in, made her take a few more shots. She had like a 3-inch grip, and then I took her to about 50 yards, and I was pretending I was guiding her. I go, you can hear it coming, you can hear it coming. Put one in the tube now, put one in the tube. Just exactly what happens when I guide people. She put one in the tube, safety's on, yeah, get ready, it's gonna come out right there. And I'm pointing at the cardboard, and I gave her a kill area about that big. She drilled it, freehanded it, drilled it. I'm like, yes. And then I got her to freehand it 3 more times. And then once from a little farther distance. So I'm confident I'll be able to get that elk within 20 yards of her for sure. So that was crazy. So she started off standing and shooting using her hand as a rest and freehanding. Right? Gold. Gold. There you go. I won't battle over that anymore. Checked, off, done. Now, the late, great Bobby Short is sitting here patiently waiting to be heard some more. She's going to be heard some more. And we're going to hear some more emails. Now, did we read this? Don't think so. So we're still in Vietnam with these entries. Rock Ape tosses Marine. I think we may have read that. Sergeant Tommy, yeah, we did read that. Khe Sanh U.S. Combat Base, Vietnam, 1968. Division Intelligence Representative, Major Robert B. Coolidge, and Regimental Intelligence Officer, Major Jerry Hudson, recognized that the key to detecting source targets came by watching the progression of movement from one sensor to another sensor. Definite patterns could be observed. For Company D, 1st Battalion, 26th Marines, the road to Khe Sanh was riddled with caves that were inhabited by, quote, maniac, hair-covered rock apes, end quote. And the NVA. The NVA was the Army of North Vietnam. Regular troops trained and equipped like soldiers by the North Vietnamese. The VC, or the Viet Cong, were guerrillas or locals that fought with the NVA. Quote, it's really late and I've been guarding the line all night. Bebop has some pretty bad dysentery, so I've been letting him get some extra sleep. He did the same for me a few nights ago when I had a terrible headache. Anyway, I decided I'd write a few paragraphs just to try to stay awake. I probably won't be able to read any of this later since it's so dark, but I don't have enough water to make coffee, and I have to find a way to stay alert. We had some noise out on the wire before. Another probe, I guess. Unless it was rock apes. There are a lot of them in the jungle around here. One of them actually came right through the perimeter once. It scared the guy who saw it so much that the kid almost passed out before firing a whole magazine at him. People laughed pretty hard about it the next day because even with all those bullets at short range, he missed. No dead rock ape in front of his position. If the guy in the next hole hadn't seen the whole thing, I would have figured that the kid was making it all up. But I'd be really scared too if some huge, furry thing on 2 legs decided to lurch right up to me in the middle of the night. Sergeant Kurt Bowley, Company D. Because the tiger's in the jungle and other land-dwelling predators, it should be noted that apes and monkeys nest up high in the trees. If rock apes were really apes, what are they doing scrounging around on the ground in the middle of the night? The behavior is contrary to all we know about the great apes. I am reminded of the incidents of one biologist who said they were not apes, but all more like some upright walking monkey men. More caisson references to rock apes. A Marine by the name of Castillo, Security Platoon, 26 Marines HQ. Quote, caisson combat base was to the south of us. That night, a trip flare went off on the north side of us. Castillo went to see what he thought would be the VC, as the flares had been going off for weeks. When he got there, he was told it was furry rock apes that seemed to have manes down their backs, end quote. The description didn't make sense, except that I have in my files an account where multiple informants observed a Sasquatch they said had a mane of hair down its upper back, all black lengthy hair. We've heard that quite a few times, actually. In a separate incident, a GI offered this description, quote, an oblong head framed its hair-covered face. Dark, deep-set eyes lay beneath a prominent brow, and they did nothing to complement the heavy jowls and angry mouth. As it stepped into a small clearing, we could see that the matted reddish-brown hair ran down the creature's neck and almost covered its body. Whatever it was, it stood at least 5 feet tall, had broad shoulders, long, thick, muscular arms, and heavy torso. It walked upright. That the things walked upright, end quote, was a recurring comment among those who saw the so-called rock apes in the small clearing as stopped and studied the Americans. Quote, what the hell is that, end quote. Someone called up from behind Linderer. It's a rock ape, said another member of the squad. Imagine being over there. Just being over there was absolutely insane to begin with. Boys dying for old men. But to have to run into the jungle and have all those diseases and insects and running around tigers in the ground. People trying to kill you from underneath every green leaf, and now this shit. Imagine how many guys are sitting there going, why me? Why is this happening to me? Another member disagreed. No, it ain't, he said. I've seen rock apes, and that sure as hell isn't a rock ape. It's an orangutan. Well, isn't it? Linderer asked while the others kept their eyes glued on the strange creature. Well, if it is, then he can't read a map because there's no orangutans in Vietnam. Orangutans in the wild don't walk upright as normal course of behavior. They are knuckle walkers. Orangs are rarely terrestrial. Swinging in trees is where orangs feel safe. At night, the orangs nest in the trees. They wouldn't be walking upright about a clearing at night. Why? Because tigers prowl at night. As I mentioned before, orangs are found in the island countries of Sumatra and Kalimantan and Borneo, all islands away from the mainland. There are no great apes in the wilds of China, Laos, Cambodia, or Vietnam. The other point is, apes don't walk upright in single file or in large troop contingencies. That's like Planet of the Apes shit right there, isn't it? Excuse me. As an aside, small tailless monkeys known as Barbary macaques are found in Morocco and Algeria. Those monkeys have been called rock apes. I'll call them macaques, however, are not apes, they are monkeys. Also, the macaque, no, it's M-A-C-A-Q-U-E. Macaque? Whatever. Monkeys in Gibraltar are also known as rock apes. The macaque adults are much too small, 1.54 feet, to fit the physical height description American GI soldiers gave. If not an identifiable non-human primate, then what was it these soldiers saw? Why then would an upright walking, hair-covered entity be called an ape? They were not described as unusually tall either, but described more in line with the diminutive indigenous people of those countries. They were not called apes by the locals, but by the Western man. American GIs in this case. The Ngoi Rung were considered a wild men by the locals. They are covered with bodily hair, unclothed, and live and survive with other wild creatures in the jungles. They hunt in groups, sometimes seen accompanied with other wildlife. A Cambodian gentleman, Sunga Lim, told Dr. Joe Watanabe that some of them hunt with shaped spears. They can take down birds with stones and talk among themselves in hum-like sing-song, sounding much like a swarm of stinging hornets with clicks, head nodding, and gyrations. The descriptions I've been able to collect were identical to our North American Bigfoot, except height and muscle mass, which seemingly is a bit less with the Ngoi Rung. They are not as massive, but they are very strong and fierce. They do not have tails and are considered wild people, not apes, even though the hairless reminded the Marines of the great apes. In 1996, Kim Nguyen, a Cambodian field biologist working near the Dong Amphan National Biodiversity Conservation Area on the borders of Vietnam and Laos, described the Vietnamese Ngoi Rung as a sort of bipedal wild man, saying that, quote, not all of them are fully haired. Most are lightly haired. An interesting remark worthy of note. Nguyen believes strongly that some of the Ngoi Rung bred indiscriminately with villagers in high remote settlements. The colleague Jen Shen Vo apparently stumbled onto such a tribe in 1987. Some were hairy and hostile. I think the term hostile actually translated belligerent. And few understood the native tongue. Most of them were unclothed, filthy, while others peeked out from a cave opening in the rocks. It was the women who were the hairiest, the men less hairy and more Asian-looking. Vo was threatened with bamboo prods like you would expect of people who had never seen civilized man before. They were very afraid of Vo and his companions. Nguyen described a 1995 interview he had with a man from Atapu province. The pilot reported he was, quote, rolling out on the Dong Amphan airport runway in light rain when two wild men came into view towards the end of the runway, running lights. Apparently the pilot got a good view of the two as he pulled up. Nguyen said the wild men were described as having long, trailing, black body hair and were skinny but otherwise appeared in good condition. The interesting behavior noted was the lack of interest in the plane's propellers or the danger of walking onto active runway. Nguyen sensed they were part of a tribe of wild men that had been reported living in the Po Vong Mountains, or the Pho Vong Mountains, Po Vong Mountains, P-H-O-U-V-O-N-G Mountains. Nguyen cited another conversation with a group of rice huskers he encountered in a small village to the south of the mountains at Ban Lanyo, Laos. They described seeing the wild men or Ngoi Rung pass through their fields on several occasions. Physically described the same. The Laotian wild men were thought mute and dumb, often squatting and watching them work. They had piercing black eyes. Their intent was on observing the villagers. The wild men would remain in a squat, motionless for long periods of time, becoming like stones. The wild men would rise to their feet and scream when approached, then flee in opposite directions from one another in apparent terror. Few attempts were made to scare them away because they were fast enough to catch the rice field rats, which burrowed into the rice paddies, destroying the terracing. Nguyen was at the time working under the tutelage of Dr. Joe Watanabe, interviewed a Vietnamese rice farmer's family who informed Nguyen about a family of wild men who kept a huge wild cat with black and white striped markings on on it as companion hunting animals. Holy shit, would that be something to see? Let me read that again. Interviewed a Vietnamese rice farmer's family who informed Nguyen about a family of wild men who kept a huge wild cat with black and white stripe markings on it as companion hunting animals. That is badass. Right there, right? The big cat hunted monkeys, rat, and birds in the trees for the wild men. Rats, of course, are piece de resistance for the hill people and daily fare at mealtime, especially in soups. The head of the rat is a delicacy. Meat is sucked from their skulls. In most Asian cultures, the rat is a sign of prosperity, wealth, and generosity. The wild men are said to be lazy and steal rice from storage barrels. The farmers and the hill people alike avoid the Ngoy rung. They have, quote, bodily sores that ooze and they stink like foul mash, end quote. Could that be the oily substance we're all familiar with? Nguyen had one unconfirmed report of a Cambodian wild man covered with silver and black hair that had blue eyes. In my data, there was the previously mentioned blue-eyed Bigfoot at Marine Base Quantico, Virginia, and another report that originated from the north of French Quebec, Canada. The third reference to a blue-eyed Bigfoot appeared in Mary Green's book, 50 Years with Bigfoot, where a Sasquatch was born in the hills of Tennessee with blue eye color. Some in research attribute blue eyes to traces of Neanderthal DNA in the Sasquatch genome. Tracy Watson wrote a short paper that infers pigmentation phenotypes for Neanderthals, the Denisova genome, as well as several modern humans with whole genome data in her paper where some were some Neanderthals brown-eyed girls, end quote, published in Science Now in March 2012. An interesting read. All right, and then there's an excerpt from that. Let's see how long that is. Not too long. Here's the excerpt. The excerpt follows. Quote, one complication is that traits such as hair color are controlled by multiple genes. To determine the cumulative impact of multiple genes in one trait, the authors assumed they could simply add together the impact of individual genes. The female Neanderthal, known as VI33.26, for example, had 7 genes for brown eyes, 1 for not brown eyes, 3 for blue eyes, and 4 for not blue eyes. By the researchers' reckoning, that means a 6-gene balance in favor of brown and a negative balance for blue. So, VI33.26's Neanderthal eyes were probably brown. According to this method, all 3 Neanderthals had a dark complexion and brown eyes, and although one was red-haired, 2 sported brown locks. 2 more paragraphs. Nevada's... Oh, hold on. Wait. I might be ending here and saving the rest for later, I think, before I crack open. All right, I'll read this last paragraph on this page. Nevada's nuclear test range. Several years back, my good friend Peter Gattila shared the following newspaper article with me, dated January of 1980. The article cites Department of Energy, DOE, at the time, spokesman Dave Jackson, who reported an employee of his saw a hair-covered creature walk across the road in the forward area of the nuclear test site heading towards Yucca Flats, the site of numerous above and below ground nuclear tests. The incident was reported some 32 years ago. No way would any Department of Energy DOE official admit something like that occurring at such a facility today. It is clear government policies have dramatically changed since this article was published. If it was able to uncover 6 reported sightings on military installations, it would stand to reason there are as many, if not more, that I didn't uncover. The Sasquatch knows no boundaries or borders. Their perception for area limitations apparently has no beginning and no end. There you go. And I'll bet they didn't wear masks either a couple years ago, right? When they were freely traveling. Now, there you go. Thank you so much, Bobby. Man, she did a lot of digging, didn't she, back then? Holy cow. And there's far more military people know about these people than are coming forward here. That's a for sure too, right? Without a doubt. Now, let's hear some people from here in 1 second. I'm checking the dog. All right, here we go. Now, I've tried semi-rolling a dice. I went looking in emails back in the beginning to see if I could decipher some of those 2,500 emails that disappeared in my folder on my other phone, which really bothers me because how many of those 2,500 people had to take a long time to build up the courage to email their honest experience in, right? So it really bothers me that happened. It's out of my control. But so here we go. See if this has been read or not, I don't know. This is from a little while ago. Sasquatch is real is the title of this email. Bracket from another military guy with high clearance and bracket. I've watched your channel a lot. Finally wrangled up the courage to say something. First account. I initially enlisted in the military as special ops. I graduated the initial INDOC course and went on completing the other courses to graduate to be a full-fledged PJ. We had to have top secret clearance, and this would later on bite me in the ass. One of the courses is SEER, Survival School in the Spokane, Washington. We have classroom training for about a week, spend some time in the mountainous woods in the northeast quadrant of the state, can't disclose how long, practicing the survival methods and strategies we had been taught, mostly by ourselves, and then at some point end up in POW camp. Also can't disclose the length of the time. While doing the evading portion, tramping around in the woods and trying to survive on minimal things, we were in typical buddy teams, 2 people having to make daily checkpoints. A couple days after we had been released to be on our own, my buddy and I were quietly hiking a game trail along the side of a drop-off to our left. We were walking one after the other and stepping in one another's tracks to reduce prints as much as possible. And I came across a dense patch of mulberries and turned to my buddy behind to let him know we were going to take a break and hunker inside the patch and snack. When I turned, I saw what looked to be a large hairy calf and foot disappear in the bushes behind my buddy. I've hunted and fished most of all the U.S., and I've never seen anything like that in my life. It was not a bear. It was too tall and too large. It had a prominent heel. The hair on the back of my neck stood up so tall that my scalp almost hurt. I continued walking backwards down the trail. I must have looked off because my buddy asked what was wrong. I couldn't talk. Once we had a little distance, I could talk. I whispered, "We have to get out of this area now." We picked up our pace and made it down the ravine and back up another mountain before making camp at the checkpoint. It took me that whole time to try and put together in my head what I had seen. While telling him, he snickered and said it was a black bear and brushed it off. Next day was uneventful, and we made it to the next checkpoint. While making camp, we heard an eerie growling howl several times with about 10 minutes break in between. My hair had stood on end again, and I quickly looked at my buddy. He nodded and whispered, "I believe you now." Needless to say, we didn't sleep much the rest of the trip and finished to the final checkpoint. Wow. Second account. I was injured and had to choose whether to get out of the military for medical or stay in and fill a needed position. I chose to be a chef over being a cop. Sorry, security forces. Since I already had a top secret clearance, where it bit me in the ass, I was sent to Minot, M-I-N-O-T, Air Force Base to cook out in the missile fields. There are missile alert facilities that control a number of missiles. This is similar to the story you told that made me come out. I don't want to give too many details about the sites and layouts. I will say the story similar to this one was off, and hopefully that was to keep guarded secrets of these sites. Anyway, at the MAF, there is a head cop at the command office that will send out groups of 4 cops out to patrol the missile fields in his/her area. They do this 24/7 and respond to alarms from the missile's perimeter fences. The fences around the missiles and the MAFs are 10 feet high with 3 strands of barbed wire across the top. Usually the alarms are animals or snow drifting on the fencing or gates causing them to move just enough. But there's been the weird instance when people would dump their garbage over the fence, or tree huggers try to break in and vandalize or chain themselves to the fences. So, every call out to a site was a serious one. Just leave them chained to the fence. Perfect. they'll starve to death. Kidding. These cops also have security clearances and patrol in full gear and armed. One night I was done with my duties and I was hanging out in the control office with one of the cops and an alarm went off at one of the sites. Like firefighters, the patrol cops suited up, putting their flak vests and layers of clothing on. It was snowing that night at about 20 degrees. The group of 4 headed out into the darkness. The taillights almost disappeared before they reached the end of the 200-yard driveway. They made their way toward the site. About 30 minutes later, they were turning onto the driveway to the missile site, the entire way making radio contact as to what was going on. If anyone knows Humvee headlights, they aren't great, and the pole light at the missile site gave up little illumination as well. They slowly drove up to the gate. They radioed in that it looked like someone dumped a few garbage bags on the backside of the site. 3 got out to go into the site and retrieve the, quote, bags, end quote. The driver stayed in and on the radio. As they were unlocking the gate, the pile raised up. It stood up. The driver could hear. The driver could heard. I think he meant the driver could hear voices saying, "What is that?" Then honking and yelling, "Come back, come back." You could hear the other cops quickly getting back into the truck. One of the cops said, "That thing was almost as tall as the fence." Another said, "I've never seen something clear a fence like that." Then the group requested a fire team for backup because they wanted to see where I went. Once the fire team and a supervisor arrived, they trekked to the back of the site. They were wading in a snow path up to their belly buttons and accounted that even though they could barely see as the creature ran into the darkness, the snow looked to be up to its knees. They followed the path maybe 40 yards. And with snow falling, poor visibility, and terrible headlamps and flashlights, they returned to the truck and then back to the MAF. They filed the control office. They filled the control office cop in on what happened, and I made sure I stayed to hear the parts we didn't get to hear over the radio. Like the first story you told about the missile fields, these are also typically flat and desolate. The particular area butted up to the Badlands, and I believe something could live and hide down through the ravines and fingers of that area. Hope this doesn't fall on a dead ear. I just wanted to verify the weirdness of Sasquatch and the military having run-ins with the creature. Thanks for your time, Bryant W. There you go. Now, if there's a chance I read this before, it does sound somewhat similar, but we've had quite a few guys email in from missile sites over the years now. I don't believe we heard this one. So, first off, I apologize it took so long, but at least I went back and I think I got lucky and I found one we hadn't heard from. Whew. The big secret, right? The big secret from the people. Can't let the honeybees find out anything. Right? Don't tell the honeybees. Keep it secret. We don't want the honeybees falling out of line. Pricks. Alright, what do we got here? This one's titled, My Brother's Extraordinary Encounter. Important addendum. All right. I beg your pardon, Steve. I always tend to rush things like emails when I'm excited about them. It's a bad habit and drives my friends bonkers, but I'm working on it. So I've copied and pasted the original email I sent you earlier and added some more important info at the bottom. Thank you for your patience, sir. Good day to you, Steve. I pray that you and yours are well. Thank you so much for all that you do. You're a good man, and I genuinely appreciate you. Appreciate the kind words. I apologize in advance, for this is going to be a long one. It doesn't look too long compared to some other ones lately. I'm using an alias for my brother, as he would be pretty upset to know I had shared his story. But this is entirely too important to be left out of the ongoing saga of the Bigfoot. And also, who knows? This just might help out someone somewhere. Bingo! Guarantee it will. I've always been fascinated in Bigfoot ever since I was a kid of 7 or 8. I even went with my friend one night to see Sasquatch, the Legend of Bigfoot, at a local theater. That the movie scared the heck out of us both. I recently rewatched the movie and had to laugh because I could hardly believe I was ever scared by this chunk of cheese. My family also knew my fascination. I believe my dad was interested too, because every time there's a Bigfoot documentary on TV, he was right there watching it with my brother and I. Interesting. My parents even gave me a copy of Peter Burns' Bigfoot book for my birthday one year, and I must have read it 100 times. The following incident happened about 10 or 11 years ago. I was chatting with my mother on the phone, and she asked how I enjoyed a recent camping trip I had taken with some friends. I made a joke about how we didn't see Bigfoot, but we had a great time regardless. To which she replied, well, your brother would be happy to learn that. And then I asked her what she meant. She seemed surprised that he'd never told me. And when I pressed her, she informed me that Larry had a very extraordinary Bigfoot encounter a few years back. I was rather PO'd that Larry hadn't told me about this when he knew of my lifelong interest. Right after I hung up with Mom, I called Larry and jokingly asked him, what's the big idea of being hairy holdout with the news of an encounter that he'd never even told me about? He guessed correctly that Mom had told me. He said he'd tell me, but he wouldn't answer any questions. I thought that's strange, but went along. This occurred in 1989 in the town of Grays Creek near Fayetteville, North Carolina. Larry was working as a delivery man for the local branch of a nationwide pizza chain. He was tasked to deliver some pizzas to a college frat house. Larry's car was in the shop at the time, so he was driving his boss's pickup truck. He successfully delivered the pizzas and was driving back through Grays Creek, North Carolina, on a road with overhanging oak trees. He had the windows open and was listening to the radio when all of a sudden he heard a loud bang from the bed of the truck. He slammed on the brakes while looking in the rearview mirror and could see something black up against the rear window. When he got to a full stop, he saw something flailing around, and it managed to roll/push its way to the open tailgate and get out of the truck bed. Larry was still looking in the rear view, trying to figure out what this thing was, when he saw it stand up on 2 feet and rise to an estimated height of 7 feet. He grabbed and tilted the mirror so he could see his face, and right as he got it in focus, he looked right into the mirror back at him with an expression of pure, murderous hate on its human-like face, his words. Next, it stood up straight, squared its shoulders, and let out a huge, super loud screeching roar. And Larry ain't no dummy. He turned right back around and stomped on the gas because he knew that if this thing got its hands on him, it would absolutely tear him apart. Larry says he has no recollection driving back to the pizza joint. Just the next thing he knew, he was getting out of the truck in the parking lot and his knees buckled, and he would have fallen down flat had he not managed to catch himself in the door's armrest. He said he stayed squatted and gulping for air for about 3 minutes, and then he went in trying to look like he was all right. The rest of the story comes from my mom and dad. When Larry's boss saw him, he knew Larry was most definitely not all right because he was as pale as a sheet and his eyes were huge. Larry's manager turned him right back around and drove him home. Larry says he has no memory of saying anything to his boss during the drive. When they arrived at the house, Mom walked Larry back to his room so he could lay down while my dad and Larry's boss looked at his truck. The part of the bed's sides near the rear window were crumpled downwards a good bit. And there was blood in the bed as well as some tufts of hair, and there was a really bad smell. Dad said it smelled like a skunk had sprayed down a burning tire while King Kong crapped on it. There's a new description of the scent. Mom and Dad wound up sitting up with Larry all night because he was obviously in a state of shock. They came close to taking him to the hospital a couple of times, but Larry insisted he was okay. He related his story to both Mom and Dad a little while after, and they said they both believe him. And my parents have always been experts at spotting lies. Trust me on that one. About a year later, Mom and Dad, my wife and I, and Larry and his family were vacationing together, and I was excited that I'd get to ask him about his experience face to face. I sat down with a notepad and pen and had downloaded a voice recorder app on my phone. He looked at both and just said, "No way, bub. I don't want you submitting this to any Bigfoot organization, and furthermore, this is going to be the last time we talk about this, okay?" I agreed and asked some questions that helped fill in the blanks in the account I just shared with you. I have a bit more to tell you about my brother. When he was relating what happened to me during our vacation, I saw both fear in his eyes and goosebumps rose up on his arms more than once. And you can't fake that. What really hammered things home for me is the fact that my brother is former Special Forces and served a tour over in the sandbox. He just doesn't get scared. Addendum. After we discussed this for the second to last time, I expressed to Larry that even though his encounter was horrifying, I was still jealous of him and told him that I just want to see one for myself. And Steve, his next line absolutely made my blood run cold. He looked at me with an expression of pure dread, which, up until then, was an expression I'd never seen on his face before. He just looked me dead in the eyes and said, matter-of-factly, quote, "No, you don't," end quote. And at that point, it finally sunk in with me that his experience had left poor Larry with legitimate PTSD. And that gives me chills to this day. Once again, God bless you and yours, and good hunting always. A friend. There you go. What the hell happened there? How and why did it jump and land in the box of his truck? Right? Why would it do that? It's not common. I don't think we've ever heard of that happening before. I wouldn't want it happening to anybody. Not me, not anyone, but we've had them smacking the sides of vehicles, running into the side of a vehicle, getting hit by a vehicle. I know I've mentioned this before, a man, and I think his kids, or wife or something, but it was a man, he wasn't alone. In his truck, driving from Cowichan to Port Renfrew. Pulled over for a pee in the dark early in the morning on the way to go salmon fishing on the coast, and something started shaking his boat violently back and forth. We're all over the place. He thought at first landslide, got in his truck, pinned it, realized he just parked on a flat piece of road, there's nothing there. And it was bent so bad he couldn't get the trailer off of the hitch of his bumper. So I guess he stopped in the wrong place, the wrong time, and somebody was there pissed. And went to violently shaking his boat and trailer behind his truck, which shook the whole thing and bent it up, right? But I haven't heard of anybody jumping in the box of a truck. So I'm guessing he jumped, landed, who knows, running behind, catching up to him, or crossed the, who knows, whatever happened. That's a holy shit story right there. Typical reaction though. We've had 100% of our veterans who have been in firefights, war, have all said the terror of encountering these people far, far worse than the terror of combat. 100% have said that. So that's pretty freaking intense, right? But anyway, there you go. Managed to squeak one out before I go do my final pack to go head back to the ocean. I'm going to try to maybe, there's a chance that some people are not going to be able to show up tomorrow, and if they don't, I might be getting up early to go into the woods. And I'm going to go set some trail cameras up for elk, Roosevelt elk, and I'll take you guys along with me. and we'll videotape what's up, what's going on around there. Lots of stuff goes on where the area I'm going to be going if we're not going fishing tomorrow. And I'll share the sights and sounds. Maybe do this from some cool place in the woods there on a riverbed or something. Might be the plan. Anyway, it's getting smoking hot out. I got to go load my trailer. I'm bringing the Zodiac home from the coast, all my prawn traps, getting the dock cleaned off in preparation to leave again. There you go. Anything you might be interested in is in the video description below. These are all there. She's got them down there. All right? That and more. I got all sorts of stuff I should be helping make available, my books and shit, but I just don't get around to it. I don't even know if she's got my books listed in the store. I don't know. My Sasquatch book and my Blacktail Hunter book. Another quick mention that's important. I do not delete comments, okay? Google does. The dirtbag owners of Google, the deep state, has things programmed to remove your comments at times. I do not unsubscribe you. Google unsubscribes you from my channel randomly. I don't know why. I don't know how they pick people out, but they do. It's them. What else? I think that's about it. I do not unsubscribe you, and I do not delete your comments. All right? So, if you've had that happen to you and you're raging about it, rage some other direction, because it's not me. Okay? I don't even read the comments. I stay away from the comments section because I'm a sucker for going after miserable people and wanting to even up the score, right? Can't help it. What else? That's about it. I'm not going to share any more emails, but hopefully you are all aware, as the globe spins, of the absolute disgusting shit that's going on the other side of the planet right now that is going to affect you no matter what. Whether you want to look away, put your head in the sand, doesn't matter now. I'm just going to say it flat out. I've been watching politics for a long time. Without a doubt, Barack Obama is probably one of the most darkest sons of bitches that ever walked the face of the planet. He has been in control for how long now? I don't know. And he has always wanted to go into war with Iran. All the dark players have wanted to go into war with Iran, and that will start World War III. So, I'm just giving you guys a heads up in case you've been looking the other way. Right now, it seems to be time that they're all about to pull the trigger on this beautiful place we call home. That small group of evil, dark, power-drunk, demon-like, subhuman sons of bitches are basically possibly even hours away from pulling the trigger on what's going to be World War III. Look into it. It's all there. If you have any interest, which I don't know why anybody would look away at this stage of the game, this is your home. This is where we all love to be, breathe the air, swim, fish, hunt, camp, shop, golf, baseball, raise your children, have happy times, barbecues on the porch. It's your home. And this is what these dark sons of frickin' bitches are doing. If I could stop them myself, I would. I would do absolutely anything. If I could round up that small handful of absolute demon-like subhumans and delete them, I would. I would take that one for the team, believe me. So anyways, there you go. If you're not aware, you are now. Do with it what you will or leave it, but if you ever get a chance to do something to stop this, you better jump on it and bring your entire family and all your friends. Meaning a peaceful protest somewhere, clog up the streets, stop giving your tax money to these evil monsters, do whatever it takes. If you get a chance to do something to stop this, you should probably look into it, organize, create community again, and stop this absolute nasty shit. All right? There you go. Look into it. It's all there. It's very easy to see what's going down. It's sad. It's frustrating. It's horrifying. I've had enough. I've had enough of the bad people. I'm not going to comply in any way. Any way. I will not comply with the dark, corrupt government, so-called leaders anymore. I'm done. I'm not complying in any way. Period. And that's a good way to start, right? Whew. Okay, I gotta calm down. I have to go do some happy shit and work hard. and I'll be back tomorrow from somewhere. Do what you love to do, all right? You have to do what you love to do, especially today. If you can, take your children, take your friends, take your partner, and do what you love to do. You better, all right? And if you can, try to stop these old greasy sons of bitches from killing us. Later.